What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Worship Fuel. My name is Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of Loop Community and the host of the Worship Fuel Show. And wow, today do I have a special treat for you. I've got Ben Fielding and Reuben Morgan with us today. Now, if you're a worship leader, which if you're watching the show, you are like 99% a worship leader, I'm sure. You have seen these guys' names on the bottom of chord charts that you are playing at your church. All right. These guys have written songs like Goodness of God, Who You Say I Am, What a Beautiful Name, Cornerstone, Ringing a Bell, Mighty to Save, just to name a few. So many songs these guys have been a part of writing that churches are singing all over the world. It's incredible. And they've come together and they've started a band. I'm not sure if they call it a band, but we're going to ask them about it, called Commons. And we've got new music out. We're going to talk about it. I've got tons of questions for them and excited about this interview. So what are we waiting for? Let's bring in Ben Fielding and Reuben Morgan.
Looking for affordable, high-quality resources for your church? Check out the app lineup from Worship Tools. You can build sleek service presentations in Presenter, schedule volunteers to those services in Planning, access chord charts and other worship materials in Music Stand, and manage church attendee information with Community.
What's up, you guys?
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm so glad you guys are here and joining us on Worship Fuel. Thanks for taking the time. So, tell us where you guys are zooming in from.
So we're in Sydney, which is other side of the world to you, obviously, in a completely different time zone. But
Yeah, I know. What time? Wait, what time of day is it there right now?
it's 9 o'clock.
Okay, all right.
In the morning.
Yeah, so in the morning, so a totally different day. You're like living in the future right now versus
Just morning
where I
coffee.
am. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. I mean, you've had a huge influence on worship leaders all over the world for a long time, too. It's not like just like a recent thing. Like you guys have been doing this a long time, and I thank you for that because you guys have just been like sowing seeds, and I mean, it has helped so many churches for so long. These songs you've written, and so you've started something new called Commons, which I'm really excited to talk with you about. This, you've got some new music out, but before we get there, can you just like give us just a very quick, brief overview of just how did you individually start leading worship and writing songs? Maybe like 3 minutes each or something.
Well, I grew up in church, and I remember being sort of 4 or 5 years old and going. We met in this little local school hall, and I'd go in with my dad, and we'd set chairs up and kind of and pack them down at the end of church. And from as long as I can remember, like we were always just involved in church and doing whatever needed to be done. And I fell in love with the songs that we sung in church when I was a kid. And I remember walking out of church and humming these little melodies and, these sort of words that at that age were kind of, some of them were obscure. The story I often tell is like about as the deer panteth. And I was like, what does that mean? I thought it was about a deer and a panther. But I was still kind of into it. But I remember just what those songs did in my spirit as a kid. And I fell in love with songs of the church. And as soon as I picked up a guitar, that's what I wanted to play. I started trying to learn the songs that we were singing at church. And I look back on it, I'm so grateful for people who gave me an opportunity to jump up and start playing. I'm pretty sure my guitar wasn't ever amplified or anything like that, but I was just up there and I was falling in love with serving God in that way. And so then, when I got a little bit older, as soon as I started writing music, I wanted to write songs that we could sing. And then I wanted to sing them and lead them. And so it's kind of been like a life journey for me. And then, coming alongside Reuben, I mean, we've been writing music together for a long time. Like when you start adding it up, it kind of gets a bit scary because, you start to realize, man, we've been doing this a little while. And, but, just looking back now, just so grateful for those partnerships too. Back when I was a kid, right through the process, I think there's something so special when we get to kind of do this with people that we love and like-minded people. It's one of the best things about being part of a faith community.
Yeah. What about you, Reuben?
We sort of grew up. First 10 years of my life were in Papua New Guinea, so in basically a third world country, but it was tropical, beautiful, and sort of grew up around missionaries and that sort of environment. So I learned piano from a Catholic priest, and I learned guitar from somebody who was working for the leprosy mission at the time. And just like beautiful people. And I feel like just from really young, they kind of instilled that, along with music, love for music, just a love for worship and God's songs. And I just have these really early memories of these hymns just being, just sung, no accompaniment, just church, just pumping them out on Sundays and kind of growing up in that environment. And so when we moved back to Australia, I really just kept working on music and the guitar. And that was kind of my passion. I always thought that I would just become a guitarist. I wanted to be Steve Vai for a long time. Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. I was
That's awesome.
Kind of worked on all the chops and, wanted to become as fast as I could. And I had really long hair. I had hair down to here, and did the whole rock thing. And I went to study music at a place called the Australian Institute of Music, and just became a part of church, actually at Hillsong, and just started leading worship in youth and playing guitar at youth and doing that. And I was just basically asked to just step up the front and start leading my songs. And I found that terrifying for a long time. But again, like Ben said, just like super grateful that people believed in us. And I had Darlene there just kind of standing next to me, just being that kind of source of encouragement, but also youth leaders and that whole thing as well. So I feel like I'm definitely the beneficiary of amazing mentors and people who have believed in me. And yeah, it's just, I think that's just kind of been the journey.
That's awesome. Ben, you mentioned As the Deer, which is funny because literally just this morning I was playing that on my piano at home. I'm a vineyard guy. My dad was a vineyard pastor. And so I grew up with all these just vineyard classic songs. And there's still the songs that I go back to and play all the time, even at bedtime, when I'm, playing songs for my kids to go to sleep to. It's all these old vineyard songs. Sometimes I'll pull out a really old Hillsong song Made Me Glad. You guys remember that song?
Oh yeah. Classic. Merriam-Webster.
Oh man, such a good song. I have a question for you guys. When you think back to when you first started leading worship, what was one of the very first songs that you learned how to play or that you led as a young worship leader? Does it ring a bell at all?
I'll give you go, Rubes.
I remember it was an old Hillsong song, Jesus, Lover of My Soul. I remember leading that a little bit, and probably
Jesus,
some of the
Lover of My Soul. That one?
Yeah, definitely. That was a banger at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably just leading kind of whatever was being sung. But again, I was so into the vineyard songs that I really had a massive impact on me early on in my Christian walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. And obviously, there were songs coming out of Australia that were really impacting the church in Australia. Jeff Bullock was writing amazing songs, and Rubes and Darlene. But then the UK was just this beautiful source of music, obviously, also Matt Redman and Tim Hughes and these guys, and Delirious. And it's actually, when I think about it, it's kind of crazy how often these amazing songs kind of get birthed out of parts of the world that are a bit unexpected. And I think that just isn't that God, just to be able to go, I can do that. I can, raise up a new song anywhere. And I think that just makes me think about how incredible the global church is. And, I know we're going to get to it, but that is part of what's on Reuben and my heart to kind of go at this stage of our lives. How can we kind of make sure that we're still creating space for songwriters and worship leaders from unexpected places?
Yeah. Is it the nostalgia in me, or was there something really special about the worship songs 20, 25 years ago? Now, all these new ones are great, right? Obviously. But Was there something just very like sweet and simple about those like old Vineyard songs, or like even like those songs that coming out from Soul Survivor and Tim Hughes, Redman?
Mountains Tremble. I Could Sing of Your Love Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here I'm to Worship.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Blessed Be Your Name. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's nostalgia. It was definitely a different time, wasn't it? A different moment in the church. Yeah, it kind of felt new. But then there was that whole movement with Ron Canoli and Alvin Slaughter, and remember that, like with Integrity and that side of it as well. Yeah, it's just kind of a different time. These are good times, though. I mean, I think there are some incredible songs out now, you know, just so inspiring. It feels like there's more than there was.
Yeah, there's more.
I don't know if that's just more access or whatever, but yeah, there's just so many more people doing it, more churches.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you guys are up to now. I mean, you guys are uniting to form a new thing. So would you call it a band, or what would you call it? It's called Commons. But what box would you put it in? Is it a band? Is it like a worship duo? Is it?
Yeah, we're kind of talking about it as being like a collaboration. And we kind of see it well beyond Reuben and I. I mean, we talked about, you know, in many ways, this is kind of just an extension of what we've been doing for a long time. And so it's a new space where we want to be able to collaborate with friends, people that we've worked with for a long time, but also new songwriters, new worship leaders. And I love that picture of bringing together trusted worship leaders and writers with people who are writing new music and are finding their feet in this space as well. So I think talking about it as a collective or a collaboration is kind of really at the heart of what we're trying to do. You know, we talked about putting out songs individually, but we kind of really wanted to do something that was broader than us, where we don't have to sing every song, but we can kind of help create this place where people can thrive and can release incredible music that hopefully is a great blessing to the church.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's the story? How did it get started?
Well, I mean, we've been friends for a long time, but really the heart behind it is Songs for Church, you know, and that's kind of what we're still doing, and so it kind of made sense. Yeah, we started talking about it, and then we've been writing a lot the last couple of years, and just kind of figuring out what would be the best place to put that music out under. A bunch of songs that we absolutely love and believe in. And so this kind of made the most sense.
Yeah. And you guys have released the first project, right? Called Chapter 1. This is out. We've got the tracks at Loop Community. Charts are up on Loop Community, on Song Select, CCLI. It's awesome. So tell us about what this first project.
Yeah, so we called it Chapter 1, and I guess it's kind of certainly creating the sense that there's going to be other chapters. And that's kind of how we see it. We want to be able to not be sort of bound by saying, you know, there's a particular theme or there's a particular schedule, but we want to just keep collaborating. And out of those collaborations, organically, we're going to keep putting out songs. You know, and I think back to, you know, even right when we were like, you know, leading worship back in our little churches in Melbourne, it's such a gift to get new music and songs that you can go, actually, that will really help my service this weekend. And so we kind of didn't want to like overwhelm people by putting out 12 songs, but we were like, we want to kind of do them in little installments so that you can kind of go, oh, there might be something on Chapter 1 or, you know, something on Chapter 2, and that can kind of, you can plug into what you're doing, and hopefully it's a real gift. I kind of see songs that we're writing and songs for the church. They should be the best friend of the worship leader, that, you know, like if you're going to put this song, this is going to help you do what you do. And I think, I mean, Reuben's been doing this for years, but like great songs for the church are songs that anybody can sing. Anybody can pick up a guitar, and they almost kind of lead themselves. And you just got to start it and then kind of let the church take over. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what we're going for, is writing those songs that really do sing themselves, that are a gift.
Yeah. My church context for the last couple of years has been congregations under 200 people. And And so you really become aware in that kind of context what you can and can't do. You know, how songs are written and the instrumentation and everything really can kind of limit or make you embrace a certain song. And so we're really conscious of that. A lot of churches are kind of under 200, under 100 people, and so even for my own church, we need songs that are easy to play and easy to sing, and musicians who are good but still quite basic skills can kind of pick them up and they sound good. You know, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're collaborating with a lot of songwriters and artists on these projects. Give us a sneak peek behind like the curtain of like, what does your co-writing process look like? Because there's a lot of worship leaders who are listening to this who are writing songs themselves or trying to figure out how to write with other worship leaders.
Yeah.
What's the process look like for you guys right now?
I mean, it's always a little bit different. It pretty much just looks like, you know, organizing to have 2, 3, 4 writers in a room, and you just get going with a song. Someone might bring an idea, a theme, a scripture, or you usually talk for an hour or so and just kind of like connect. And actually some of those times are just the best of times as far as connecting, getting to know people, and I've just got to know some of my best friends that way. And usually there's something that kind of comes out of it that you sort of jump on as far as a theme or something that on somebody's heart, and you just go with that from there, you know. But every time is a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing I would say is like it's a worthwhile pursuit, and collaboration. It's not always the easiest thing to get used to because the creative process is such a vulnerable thing, right? Like you're kind of bringing a part of yourself to the table. And I think one of the first things that I've had to learn and continually have to learn is to be vulnerable, is to kind of is to just have the boldness to kind of throw out something and not to be ruled by what's cool. I think cool can be a real enemy to creativity. I think as writers, when we get together, it's great to trust your instinct and kind of go, well, I feel like this is moving me, or this theme is really moving, or this line, and so offer it, you know, and offer it with open hands and kind of have that spirit of like going, if people in the room aren't jumping on board with it, it's okay. Just keep going. Believe God that there's going to be something else. There's going to be another idea. But then also become a good listener in a co-writing session. So I love working with people who, you know, someone might be just quietly humming something in the background. They're like, wait, what was that? You know, and they're kind of right onto the idea. And I think if we're good collaborators, we can kind of champion ideas as they're happening wherever they're happening in the room. So having that sort of like attentive ear for what is that moment of inspiration.
Yeah. You guys have been writing for a long time. How often does it happen where you're writing a song and you're like, this is awesome, and then it dawns on you, wait a minute, this sounds like Who You Say I Am, or this sounds like Made to Save or Cornerstone. I mean, there's so many songs that you guys have written. Like, does that happen often where you're like, oh no, this, you know, we just ripped off that melody from our other song? Does that happen often?
It doesn't happen as much as you think it would. Occasionally it could be any song and someone's just like, oh, maybe that's a bit close to, or often it's more, oh, that's a bit like a song I'm working on with such and such over here. So it's more about what's happening in the moment rather than, you know, what you might have written 5 years ago or 2 years ago.
Right.
That's what I thought.
How do you guys keep track of all these songs? Like practically, like you're writing all these songs with people. Is there a Dropbox you throw all of them into, or is there a voice memo box you're dumping all these things in? Like how does that even work?
That's a really good question.
I've definitely got my voice notes. I've got better at trying to label things because, you know, you can end up, I think I've got something like 5,000 unnamed voice notes. So that's kind of useless, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't really get through all those. So I've had to try to file them a little bit better just in my phone. But then the other thing that's great is like having, you know, Rubes and I having that collaboration is that the songs that excite both of us, we stay on top of them. And there are times where you forget a song and like it hopefully then Reuben or somebody else would be like, remember we that thing? And so I kind of hope, or at least I believe that like a song that's sort of that's metal, like it will come back to somebody's attention, even if it's just the chorus or it's a verse or it's something about it that was special. And I love getting, a message like on an old songwriting thread where somebody's like, how cool was this chorus? And then all of a sudden everybody's back in again and that song kind of comes back to life.
Yeah, because I would think that's a good point though. Because I was thinking originally, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many songs that probably just get lost. Because I'm thinking about voice memos, how you could have like hundreds of them, and they're unnamed or they have like your just home address, home address number 1.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not helpful at all. But that's a really good point that like a song that probably is worth coming back to is probably stuck in somebody's head, or it's going to come back at some point.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is that. And I think that you do sort of have to be careful with that, that you can sort of move past different things too quickly. And so I think we've been in situations where you can have 100, 200 songs and songs get buried, 50 songs ago or whatever. And I think that sometimes you can get too focused on what you're writing just now rather than maybe you had something better 2 months ago, but you're not feeling it in the same way in the moment. And so I think that decision-making process, I think really figuring out, okay, what is our short list and then the short list again is a really crucial part of the creative process. And because I mean, the flip side of what we're saying is that I think songs get missed as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you guys have sessions where, sorry, I'm digging into the songwriting thing, but hey, I'm with like 2 amazing songwriters for worship. But so do you guys have instances where you're writing a song and then that song just becomes 3 songs? Because you're like, hey,
totally.
This section is amazing. This section is amazing. This section is amazing, but they don't intertwine at all. So let's just cut it up.
Yeah,
that happens.
Totally do. And I think that's really important to have the awareness to go like these 2-3 sections maybe don't live together. And they can be friends, but they're not going to be roommates, and so you kind of got to,
right.
And then work out which is the bit for that day that is really kind of, it's got everyone's attention. So actually one of the songs on this chapter 1 is a song called Praise Belongs. And we had this whole song that I actually really like the song still, but the bridge was the praise God from whom all blessings flow, this sort of ascending melody. And we came away from that session and sort of tracking a little demo and whatever. I was just like, that bridge feels so good, but it doesn't feel like it lives with the chorus. And so then we kind of were on our little chat and what do we do? And so we took the bridge, made it the chorus, and wrote a song around that section. And one day we'll go back and revisit the rest of that song.
Definitely should.
I think it's a cool process. I think if you can have the confidence and the awareness and just go, for the sake of getting the best possible song, I think we actually just need to take one section and the other 2 have to just go into the voice note folder for a little bit.
Yeah, and that could be a painful process. It takes some guts, actually, to be like, okay, we finished this song, but actually, this does not belong in this song. This is its own song.
Yeah.
I've met songwriters who also say that, and I'd be curious if this is you guys, who they don't listen. They try to avoid either listening to really old music or even sometimes like new music because they feel like it would influence them to maybe, it's just like if you're listening, let's just say I'm like listening to all these old Vineyard songs all the time. You might then write a song that sounds like Refiner's Fire.
That sounds like a good thing to me.
Yeah, right.
I love that
I know
song.
it's a great song. But do you guys have any of those sort of like boundaries for yourselves at all, or no? Or do you?
Oh man, I love music and I love going to concerts and I listen to music all the time. So I don't know what I would do if I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do understand the paranoia though. And like I've had moments where like my kids, for example, are really into like musicals at the moment and they want to listen to it all the time. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to start writing really theatrical worship songs.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Well, I think
grew up with
what's
my kids.
interesting. Oh, sorry.
Wiggles.
You what? Sorry, Reuben.
Do you have the kids band, the Wiggles, in America? Have you heard
We
of
probably
that?
do, but I haven't. I don't think I've played that for my kids. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, no. Anyway, it was huge here, and it was just basically a kids band. But I had to ban it because I didn't want it to influence my
Yeah.
my sort of music. It's
Yeah. Right.
so cheesy, awesome,
Right.
but really cheesy.
I just think it's interesting too that it just seems like there's seasons where all of a sudden there's some phrase or idea that it seems like tons of worship songs are incorporating.
Mm-hmm.
And so for example, like a couple years ago, there was like make room. There was this phrase like make room. And then all these worship songs were like talking about making room. And then there was like before that, it was like do what only you can do or something. And it just feels like sometimes there's phrases that all of a sudden there's like five worship songs that are saying that phrase. And I don't know if that's like the
Mm-hmm.
Holy Spirit just like inspiring people to like be singing one thing,
Yeah,
or if it's
you think
this
that's it?
influence, or if it's this influence factor. I don't know.
Mm.
Have
I
you guys
think we
ever picked up
do
on that before?
tend to, yeah, we do tend to all sense similar things. I think, like in like
Yeah.
in the moment, like the hymnal of the day, it will be, we'll get the sense that like it's too experiential, or it's too, it might even feel too transcendent at one point, and it feels like we're missing that devotional. And so I think that as a collective of writers, we're kind of responding to the same sense of what's missing in our, contemporary hymnal. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's okay. And then what I do love about it is, and my encouragement probably to songwriters would be to really find your own voice in that, because we could come at writing the same thing, kind of going, it feels like we need this, and we're going to come at it from different angles. And in fact, we're writing about an infinite God, and so there's so many ways we could say the same thing. And there's beauty in getting that picture more holistically from different angles, if we can really find our own voice, and if we're not too, persuaded by what we're already hearing, but to kind of go, how can I take all those influences and take my history, take my current church context, and bring something that feels distinct.
Yeah.
And I think that's the greatest gift that we can give to the church.
Definitely. Yeah, I would probably echo that as well, and just say, because it is a community, obviously you're going to have a little bit of, we're all kind of thinking similar things or going along those lines. I would say it's good for everybody to be thinking in terms of how do we diversify our influences and kind of go outside of, otherwise this whole thing becomes a bit of an echo chamber, or we're creating in a vacuum, we're all listening to each other's music. So I think let's keep diversifying our creative influences and bring something fresh and kind of new to the table, and keep pushing the envelope a little bit, push the genre forward.
Yeah. How often are you guys writing songs alone, on your own?
I would
think there's
say like a
always
few times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
it's
it is.
like, it's not for me. Like wouldn't necessarily carve out like a day or two a week to say I've got to have that sort of time on my own. It's often more like I'll sit down either trying to finish something, or to send back new sections for a song, and occasionally it is me just sort of sitting there, just kind of letting that process flow, and then sometimes a whole song will get written, or sometimes it's just a section that I go, oh, that would be really helpful for next Thursday when I'm with Reuben and whoever. And so I think that part of the process is really important still, to to be comfortable in just digging into your own instincts, and not. I think something I was going to say before too is not falling too in love with one part of the songwriting process. So I love just kind of vamping on ideas. I could go all day, just kind of, what about this? What about that? But at some point, the actual craft of sort of starting to dig into something and, chisel away lyrics, or like, soften melodies or change some chords. That part of the process is so important. it's just staying kind of in love with all of those parts of the process because they're all necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good word. It can be hard to finish them. I know there's people who have like, you just have tons of unfinished songs or songs that are 75% done and then they just never get actually like finished. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah.
Like how to actually like, do the hard work to chisel it away and finish it off.
Yeah, I think so. I think get used to finishing songs, not leaving things at sort of 70%, 80%, because you can finish a song and then come back later and then rewrite and do that. But the discipline of actually bringing something to completion with the sense that you can come back, I think
yeah, right. As you're playing it later, you might be like, hey, this word feels better or this lyric feels better.
It's
so
a
on
draft,
your latest,
but get better at that process of completing.
Yeah,
not one verse and half chorus or whatever.
Right. That's a good word. All right. So on this last just one more question here let's talk about this project. So from this project that you guys did, chapter 1, is there like a song on there that you're really hoping that worship leaders will listen to and maybe would incorporate in their churches? Is there something that you're really excited about? I know that's like asking someone like who's their favorite child, I know, but like, is there one in particular that you're like, I love this song, like this is going to go somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's so hard to pick one out in case the others are listening. But
Yeah.
I think like the song "Praise Belongs to Me" is kind of been the song that I'm like, because I've led that enough to know that really works and it really helps, and it does feel like one of those songs that you start it and people start singing it. So I feel really hopeful about that song and what it might be able to do in helping across the church. And then there's a song, "Why We Praise," that was kind of one of the first things that we wrote for this whole thing. And it felt significant because it's based on Psalm 145, that one generation commends his works to the next. And thinking about how much that is what we do as worship leaders, as songwriters, as we're trying to capture what God has done, and our songs actually pass our theology on to our kids and their kids. And we're talking about these songs that we were singing 20 years ago, but I mean, how much did they shape your theology and how you saw God? And so I love that song because it kind of it's almost like telling the story of why we do what we do. And in doing it, it's also kind of, for people who aren't songwriters, it's just listing like why God is worthy of praise, why we praise him. And I think it's a sort of an up-tempo song too, which I feel like, as a worship leader, people keep writing those songs because there's such a need for them.
It's hard to find a good up-tempo one to start the set with. I know.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Reuben? Same thing with that. You agree with that song?
Yeah, if you're going to do one of the three, start with "Praise Belongs" because it's expansive. And same, I've led it in sort of a small sort of group setting and kind of small congregation setting, and it kind of works. And you need those songs that you feel like you can just play two chords and everyone's just leaning in, and so I would. It feels like it's that song.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we have the tracks and the charts for that up on there. So worship leaders, make sure you go listen to that. All right. This is my final question. I know I said that was my last question, but this is my final one. You're sitting down at the piano or guitar. You're just by yourself. Just want to sing and want to worship on your own. What's a song that you go to that you love to play that you did not write? All right. You can't be playing one you wrote. All right. Which I know is going to be hard for you guys because you've written a lot of them. And I'll go first. To give you a minute to think. And preferably it's an old song. All right. Like a classic. I love playing "Give Thanks." This is the old Vineyard song. Do you remember that? Give thanks.
Oh,
With grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Love.
I just love going back to that song. What about you, Ben?
Yeah. I think I love the song. There is none like you. No one else could touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you.
That is an amazing song.
I could sit there and just play that all day.
Yep. That is such a good one. Who wrote that song? I don't even know. I'm trying to remember. Do you know the writer on that?
I don't.
Was it a Vineyard song? I think it maybe was Vineyard.
It sounds like it is.
It does sound like a Vineyard song.
Does.
All right, well, we'll look that up in a minute. What about you, Reuben?
For me, oh right,
that's it.
Yeah,
what a song.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's oh Lord, you're beautiful, your grace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Keith Green.
I want to take your word. And yeah, the walk up on the piano there is that's a fun one to play on the piano too.
Yeah, I love it.
Wow. You guys, thanks for taking the time to do this. And thank you for what you are doing, what you've been doing for like decades, but now what you're doing in this new chapter in resourcing worship leaders in churches. Thank you for just sticking with it, not, quitting, not, just thank you for that you've just kept going for real. It's a huge blessing. So thanks for joining us today on the show.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate you, man. Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Blessings, guys. Bye. All right, guys. Ben Fielding, Reuben Morgan from Commons. Make sure you go check out their music on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music. It's there. We also have all the tracks and the charts at Loop Community. So go get those resources and play one of these songs at your church. I'm sure one of those is going to fit awesome at your church. So go check it out. Go search Chapter 1 at Commons. And thanks for joining us on the Worship Fuel Show. Subscribe, and we'll see you next time.